You know what they're doing?
What?
They're spending their free time to give back to the homeless. You got Keaton Hendricks and Eric Sellier, okay? They wanted to supply socks to homeless shelters. A big need, by the way. So they started a business, Sky Footwear, that lets you buy a pair of socks and in return, they donate a pair.
There are people in my own community that were suffering and hurting. How simple a sock is to us is such a huge need to them.
True. They run their business out of their dorm room. Every month they choose a different shelter in their state. They've donated more than 2,000 pairs to date. And by the way, they picked a good product. Have you noticed that socks have made a huge comeback?
Yes, my husband has many interesting colored socks.
Right?
But now I'm going to buy them from there.
Why not, right?
Why
If
not?
you're going to make a commercial choice, why not make one that is actually giving back?
That is not what I thought you would say college kids are doing in their spare time. I was thinking more keg stands,
That's
but
why
I'm
it's
very
the good
happy to
stuff.
see that. That's why it's the good stuff this morning.
All right, so we have special coverage of FBI Director James Comey testifying before Congress. It's going to begin right now with Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper. We've been calling you guys the big dogs
The big
to bring
guys.
us the big story.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I'm Jake Tapper live in Washington for CNN's special coverage of a critical day in the Trump presidency.
And I'm Wolf Blitzer. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. Just a short time from now, a dramatic moment in the wild saga over President Trump's accusations that his predecessor, the former president, Barack Obama, wiretapped him inside Trump Tower in New York City. The head of the FBI is expected to publicly rebuke the president's claims. A truly historic moment. James Comey testifying before the House Intelligence Committee, not only on the wiretapping claims, but also the investigations into the extent of Russia's interference in the U.S. presidential election. The head of the National Security Agency will also testify. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle demanding answers into the Trump campaign's possible ties to Russia. The burning questions this morning: will Comey publicly admit whether there is an investigation? Are there any smoking guns or evidence of collusion? And how will Comey respond to the president's wiretapping allegations?
Also this morning, President Trump's Supreme Court nominee facing his highly anticipated confirmation hearing. At least one Democratic senator is not ruling out staging a filibuster of Judge Neil Gorsuch. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first, the testimony from FBI Director Comey and what we know going into it. Let's bring in CNN senior congressional.
Well, a Democratic congressman who sits on the committee. Mr. Swalwell, what is the most important thing you want to hear from James Comey today?
I think it's important for the American people to understand the evidence behind the interference campaign that Russia ran. Also to know if any U.S. persons were involved in that campaign. If he can say, we need to debunk the wiretapping claim, which was nothing more than a smoke bomb that the president rolled into this investigation. But it's important to clear that up and get back to this investigation. But this is the first inning of what will be a long investigation. And I hope that the American people walk away understanding Russia's not our friend. They attacked us. We need to know whether U.S. persons were involved, because right now there are a lot of dots that are connecting on Donald Trump's team with the Russians and their government.
Now, at CNN and other news outlets, we've reported that the FBI is conducting this investigation to Russia, looking into alleged contacts with Trump officials, Russian officials. Do you think it's important for Comey to publicly confirm that there is an FBI investigation?
If there is an active investigation, we don't want him to compromise that investigation. We just want to pledge that he will follow the evidence, pursue all leads. And we actually believe that that's what the FBI traditionally does, and we don't have any reason to believe they won't do that now. So if there is an active investigation, we may not learn more about that today.
Yesterday, Devin Nunes, the chairman of the committee, said there's no evidence yet of any contacts, collusion between Trump officials, Russian officials. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't agree. It's also very early in the investigation, but we do know that Carter Page, who was the senior foreign policy advisor for the Trump team, with permission of the Trump team, went over to Moscow a month after it was revealed that Russia was attacking us. We know Roger Stone was in contact with Guccifer 2.0, who were releasing the Russian-hacked emails of John Podesta's email, and that that is pretty out there, and he's admitted to doing that. So that, to me, is working with the Russians as they're attacking us.
Do you want to hear from Stone, Carter Page, Manafort before the committee?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Stone, Manafort, Page, Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's personal security team who traveled over to Russia when the president went there in 2013 as well.
Do you think that the committee will call those people forward?
I hope we do, and I also think no investigation would be complete unless we were able to look at the president's tax returns.
And one other thing, the issue of wiretapping. Over the weekend, Devin Nunes and Adam Schiff both said that those documents that the Justice Department sent to the committee show that do not confirm what the president's been saying, that he had been wiretapped under the orders of President Obama. But I'm wondering, do those documents at all suggest any incidental collection of Donald Trump's communications at all?
I hope that's cleared up more today, but what we know about the president's claim is that it was deceitful. It was intended to really, obstruct this investigation. And juries are instructed every day in America's courtrooms that if a witness in an investigation lies about a material fact in an investigation, you should consider not believing anything they say. And I think Donald Trump's credibility has been devastated by this claim, which has been debunked.
Do you know if there has been any incidental collection? Is there any evidence to suggest that?
We're hoping to learn more about that today.
Okay. All right, Congressman Saul, I know you have a very busy day. Jake and Wolf, back to you.
Thanks, Manu Raju. Appreciate it.
The president has already made his feelings about the FBI hearing known. This morning, he sent out a series of tweets repeating claims he's made in the past, calling any allegation of collusion with Russia, in his words, fake news, accusing Democrats of making up the story as an excuse for losing the election, and saying the real story is the leak of classified information. Let's go to our White House correspondent, Sarah Murray. Sarah, exactly 2 months after he took the oath of office, Donald Trump is looking at what could be the most significant week, potentially, of his presidency.
That's right, Wolf. And what is very clear is this president could use a win. If you look at his approval rating, Gallup does a daily tracking poll. It has hit a low for this presidency. Donald Trump now has a 37% approval rating. He's clearly looking to turn that around. He's clearly looking to notch some victories. And he has a very busy day ahead of him to try to move toward that goal. So he's beginning today with a meeting with Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, also someone who has been very critical of the president's plans to cut foreign aid. Now, after that, he's transitioning over to health care. We know this is his big legislative agenda item. We know the House is expected to vote on a bill later this week. So he's going to be meeting today with House Speaker Paul Ryan, as well as Health and Human Services Secretary Price, as well as Dr. Zeke Emanuel, to continue to go over some of the details of this, figure out how they can get the support they need to move this at least through the House before it gets to the Senate. After that, he will be welcoming the Iraqi Prime Minister here for a bilateral meeting. All of this before he heads out of the White House, out of Washington, out of the bubble later today, and goes to Louisville, Kentucky. We're expecting him to talk about health care there, but I think the thing to watch, Wolf, is really just how hard he sells this new plan. Again, they're getting closer to this vote. They still need to pick up a number of supporters, so we'll see how he makes the pitch this evening. Back to you guys.
All right, Sarah, thanks very much, Sarah Murray. Today, the House Intelligence Committee won.
That's right. Or not, he was wiretapped by President Obama, FBI director speaking through aides, and the former director of national intelligence has said there's no evidence of what President Trump claimed. Republicans, the former CIA director Mike Morrell, who had endorsed Hillary Clinton, also said that there's a lot of smoke, but no fire, not even one iota of a fire. So you're going to see different sides emphasizing the lack of evidence of charges made by the other side.
And the president tweeted this morning, the real story that Congress, the FBI, and all others should be looking into is the leaking of classified information. Must find leaker now. Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, he's going to be opening up this committee hearing fairly soon. That's what he says. Someone or a bunch of people violated the law in leaking classified information.
This is a point where it might be difficult if you're on one side or the other, but in Washington, D.C., one can actually hold two fairly conflicting ideas in one's head at the same time, which is we should get to the bottom of what happened with Russia, and also these leaks are a problem. It's the same thing with the Trump tax returns. Perhaps President Trump should release his tax returns to get all the evidence out there or lack thereof, but also the leaking of his tax returns, also very problematic. But again, in this town where everything is so delineated down the middle, you're on one side or the other, sometimes it's difficult for people to hold those two thoughts at the same time.
And I don't think we can overstate the enormous amount of pressure that James Comey is under during this open public hearing today, the FBI director.
Yeah, although I have to say, just as we've watched Director Comey over the last few years, I don't know that it's pressure that he doesn't welcome. He seems to like being the center, especially when he is able to demonstrate before the crowd his integrity. This is something that he seems to be fairly fond of, his reputation and his own integrity. This is one of the reasons why the Clinton people, that we'll hear from in a few minutes, I'm sure, are so against him for what he did during the campaign. But here is an opportunity where he likes to be the only straight shooter in town, the only one whose integrity is unimpeachable. So, yes, a lot of pressure, but I think he kind of likes it.
The other witness, Admiral Mike Rogers, the director of the National Security Agency, the super sensitive spying operation, eavesdropping, electronic intelligence, he was being considered for a position, a different position, director of national intelligence in the Trump administration. He's going to be under a lot of pressure today as well. Although
we did see over the weekend that an official from the National Security Agency told, I believe, the BBC that the charge against, this is a different conspiracy theory that we heard, this one from the White House, referring to Judge Napolitano on Fox News, the idea that the British spies actually were the ones who tapped President Trump, then candidate Trump's phones. The National Security Agency, an official there referring to that as errant nonsense. It's actually, there's so many conspiracy theories around here, it's tough to, we need a special chart for each one of them. That is the latest conspiracy theory, this one that the British actually spied. Also, zero evidence to back it up. Everyone who knows anything saying completely not true.
Yeah, and that was repeated by the White House. The claim was repeated, if you will, by the White House press secretary and later by the president himself. Let's discuss with our panel, our senior international correspondent Clarissa Ward. She's here in Washington with us, our chief national correspondent John King, our chief political correspondent Dana Bash, also with us, our chief political analyst Gloria Borger, our justice correspondents Evan Perez and Pamela Brown, and our CNN national security analyst and retired CIA chief of Russia operations Steve Hall. Steve, I'm curious, what are you going to be looking for?
You know, well, there's so much chaff up in the air. I mean, some of the stuff that Jake was just going over in terms of all the stuff that people are talking about. You know, what's going on at GCHQ?
Which is the British intelligence agency.
The British NSA equivalent. All this stuff that's up in the air is just amazing, and in my view, a complete distraction away from what is the most critical piece of all of this, which is, was there contact, cooperation, or collaboration between the Russian government and the Trump team, the Trump campaign prior to the election? For me, that's the central question of all of this, because in my view, what Russia is really about is trying to undermine Western democracies, and of course the United States is the jewel in the crown for them. So I think that's what I'm really looking at.
But I don't think we're going to get an answer to that question today from Comey. Do you? I really don't think so. I think the most we may get out of him is this answer to the direct question about whether Trump Tower was wiretapped or not. And I think that's kind of an easy answer for him to do, because he doesn't have to discuss classified information if he's answering in the negative here, which is we did not do that, and that was something that we know from reporting that he wanted the Justice Department to announce, and they didn't announce it. But you guys would know better than I. Are we going to get an answer to that?
I think one of the things that's going to happen is, you know, this idea of the collusion, which is the big question that hangs in the air. I think for Comey in particular, there's a lot the FBI still does not know. This is an investigation that is being handled by the counterintelligence section. It's still in its early beginnings, and so you know, even if he is able to answer that question right now, some of that information may change. His agents might be able to find additional information, which changes the answer.
Exactly. I spoke to someone recently who was involved in the investigation who said, look, we're dealing with shades of gray in this investigation. It's not black and white. We don't have, at this point, any smoking gun. And so I would be shocked if Director Comey comes out and speaks to anything in regards to the contacts and the meaning behind these contacts between Trump's associates during the campaign and the Russians, given the state of the investigation and given the fact that historically the FBI director does not come out and talk about investigations while they're ongoing. And the director has said when it came to the Clinton email server investigation, he only spoke about that once it was a closed investigation. So to Gloria's point, he's been wanting to come out and knock down this allegation by President Trump that his phone was wiretapped. But beyond that, whether there was incidental collection on anyone or whether there was surveillance on any Trump associates, I would be very surprised if he gives a direct answer.
Well, let me ask you a question, because what you reported, you and Evan, was that what Director Comey wanted was for the Department of Justice to go out and knock it down, and they did not. Why did they not? Was it because Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, had recused himself, or
I think it's a combination of things. I think part of the problem with the Justice Department right now, and I think across the Trump administration, is that you have a lack of political appointees who are in positions to be able to engage on some of this. We don't have a Deputy Attorney General who would be the one that would be leading this investigation. Jeff Sessions is recused. Right now, Comey is kind of the only guy who can go up there to Capitol Hill and do this testimony, which he really, frankly, would rather not do.